all the details that you managed to, you know, and often those details, like what he was wearing and what he was drinking and what brand he was drinking, all those details are what make it real, because those details fill in, that's the production design in our head. That's terrific. And I wonder whether in the process of writing this, I mean, I guess you can't help it, you became a fan of your characters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Look, I've always been interested in Errol Flynn. Well, as I say in the back of the book, I think it was one of the first adult books. When I say adult, grown up. My Wicked Wicked Ways. My mother had a copy of it, yeah. And I used to, but it was a bit. It was known to be a bit risque, and I used to sneak it off and read it in bed at night every now and again. And it was so I've always been interested in him because that's a hell of a book. My Wicked Wicked Ways. It's still in print, I think. And as I say, I was in the middle of writing another manuscript with a character with the characteristics of Errol Flynn, all that charm and that physical presence and the athleticism and the daring. That's not the first time I've used him as a basis for a character.
What about, it must happen, it happens to all writers I know, there's a time or times when you get stuck. What, did you ever get stuck, and what did you do? Essentially I'd go back and edit, and of course, you know, with it's funny now that it's in print and there's things I want to go back and fiddle with, and you know, you've got to be careful. If you read your published work, you'll drive yourself mad. But before it's in print, you can do anything you like, you know. And so I would take the opportunity to go back and edit what I'd already written, and try and build up the inspiration, if you like, by finding something which I think is good to trigger something.
Yeah, trigger something else. Yes.
Can you think of one or two examples of what you'd change in the book and why? What you'd fiddle with?
Apart from a couple of typos.
Apart from the typos, yeah.
Look, they're not big things. They're just little things like a turn of phrase and things like that. You know, sometimes I'll see a turn of phrase. Not with the dialogue, because with the dialogue it doesn't matter about the turn of phrase. You know, the dialogue it's got to be genuine, and people don't script when they talk. You know. But some of the descriptive stuff and so on, I probably want to fiddle with every now, you know. But it goes on and on.
If I may, a slightly personal question. In the process of writing a novel, took some time, I presume, right? It's not overnight. What happened at home? Did Ulla, your wife, was she involved? Did you share with her what you progress reports?
Yes. Well, Ulla reads everything I write 10 times. You know, I hold it a ransom. She's got to read it. Look, she's the first port of call when it comes to you know. When you're finished, sometimes you're really sure that it's good. Sometimes you're not so sure. Sometimes you know it's terrible. And in any of those cases, I'd get Ulla to read it. If it's terrible, then I'm looking for help. If it's not so good, I guess I'm looking for help. And if I think it's good, I'm just looking for her to say, yeah, that's good.
Great, yeah. But does it ever happen that you think it's good and she doesn't, and that's awful?
Yeah,
that's terrible.
No, it's not awful, because she'll have a reason for it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be what usually happens is she doesn't understand it, and she'll say, but why this and why that? And I say, oh, because of this. Well, that's not in the book, she'll say. And, you know...
You're too close, and
it's all in my head and it's not on the page. And that's when I realise it's not on the page. And she's not the only one to say that, of course. I mean, I have the same problem with the editor. Yeah. Why is this happening? Well, because this and this. Well, do you mind putting it in?
Okay, I think we're running out of time.
But you don't argue about
before we
before, I know that you have something to say.
Don't think
Before
so.
that, though, just in case there is a burning question that needs to be answered by you. Yes, there is. There we go.
I haven't read the book, Lloyd, but I spoke about it in the pub when we were writing it. The interesting thing is that what about Errol Flynn's politics?
Errol Flynn's politics
Because,
is the question.
Obviously, Fidel was a Marxist. What was Errol?
Well,
Hedonist.
look, his politics were left. Although there was a book written that claimed he was a Nazi, that was rubbish. He had a very good friend. He writes about him in My Wicked, Wicked Ways, although he changed his name. I can't remember the name he uses in the. I can't remember either of the names, the real name or the alias that he uses. But he was this. He was an Austrian Jew who was a Nazi. Go figure. And he got involved in certain things when he and Errol were travelling around the world. Look, if Errol was aware of it, I don't think he would have cared, because he was only 23, 24, 25 maybe. I don't think he really cared about the politics of the person he was with. But later on, he certainly was on the left. He went to Spain because he wanted an adventure, yes, but he went there during the Civil War. He went there because he wanted to support the Loyalist side. When he went to Cuba, look, you've got to understand also that Castro was not communist. The Cuban Revolution was not communist. There were communists involved in it. I mean, Raúl was communist, Che Guevara was communist, but Fidel Castro was a Fidelista. All he cared about was himself. I shouldn't say that. All he cared about was his revolution.
Wasn't he a Marxist?
He became a Marxist later on. Yeah, well, look, he read Karl Marx, and he thought Karl Marx was very interesting. In fact, I've mentioned in the book that Errol read him as well. Errol found him a crashing bore, whereas Fidel wanted to talk about him. And Errol doesn't want to talk about Karl Marx. But it wasn't a communist revolution. And as it says in the book, do you see a red star on my hat? No, there were no red stars. He was only communist in Batista's mind and in the minds of the Americans afterwards. And after the revolution, when he couldn't get what he wanted from America in terms of aid, because he'd nationalised all their industries, the Russians said, we'll give you whatever you want. What do you want? But you have to be a communist. I'm a communist.
There was another gentleman with a... Yes, sir.
Lloyd, one of the main characters in the book, of course, is Woodsy. Can you...
Yes. Yeah, actually, the book is about 3 characters. Yes, you're right. Yeah. The book is about 3 characters. There's Errol and there's Fidel, but Fidel is actually the 3rd most important one. He is really just someone for Errol to play off. The other really important character in the book is Errol's girlfriend, whose name was Beverly Adlin. That's her real name. He called her Woodsy. Woodsy, my wood nymph. But she was only 17. I mean, he met her when she was about 15, and he was 46 or something. And he took her down to Cuba with him and made her the star of his film. Now, I rather fancy that Woodsy there was a bit more to Woodsy than people make out, and she is quite a substantial character in this book, even though she's only 17.
Some lovely scenes with her. Yes?
Further to the question of Fidel and communism, he actually wrote a book at the time called History Will Absolve Me, given the form of a long speech, in which he's very much opposed to the communists, claiming that they supported Batista on all occasions.
Yeah, well, see, Batista had a communist in his cabinet. Before Fidel started, before the wind started blowing Fidel's way, the leader of the Communist Party was a member of Batista's cabinet. When the wind started blowing Fidel's way, which is only a few months before Havana fell, he resigned from the cabinet and wanted to become part of Fidel's crowd up in the mountains. So politics was, until the Russians came along, the politics was very mixed up.
All rich material, and I'm sure that you'll...
There's just one more joke.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes?
I just want to ask about the death scene.
The what?
The death scene, Errol, when he dies at the end of the book. Sorry to give away the ending of the book.
What, Errol died?
Spoiler.
urban party scene where he almost becomes a sideshow.
Yeah. Look, the details of that are all true. Obviously, the dialogue is not, but the details...
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But maybe.
Not necessarily, yeah. There are... yes, so the details of where he died, the address, and so on, that's all on the record. The fact that he took him, that the doctor invited all these people around to meet Errol Flynn, that's all true. Took himself off to another room and died. Now, what happened after that is the subject of conjecture. Did a party, did they turn on a party around the body, or did they not? There are also people will say that that never happened. At the time, people said they had a party around the body. Then people afterwards said no, that was nonsense. That didn't happen. But I prefer to think, because why I chose to believe that that was the case, that they had the party around the body, was because the hero of his life when he was in Hollywood was John Barrymore. And there's a famous story about John Barrymore. When he died in 1943, Raoul Walsh, the director, and a couple of other buddies of Errol's, got the body out of the mortuary and took it to Errol Flynn's house and propped it up in a chair with a whiskey. Errol Flynn came home from the studio and was talking to him for 5 minutes. And as he says there, only when I saw he wasn't drinking did I realise that he was dead. So Errol always wanted to be John Barrymore. So there, the last act, or not the first act of his afterlife, is John Barrymore.
He probably wanted that party. Yes.
What happened to Woodsy?
What happened to Woodsy?
Ah, now that's really interesting. Glad you asked that question. The last page of the book covers... No, she...
Do not read the last page first.
No, it's only in the acknowledgements, because Woodsy died only this year in January. And the weird thing about it was that the publisher at UQP was in the middle of... I can't remember if she was reading the book. No, she'd given it on to the editor. And she sent me an email with the obituary from the LA Times of Woodsy. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, she only died in January, and she was married to the one fella for about 40 years. And as it says there, he said, and this is in her obituary, he said, she never stopped loving Errol Flynn. Oh.